Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Queer Peers and Graphic Novels, Creating Space for LGBTQ+ Readers. I'm Susan Maguire, Senior Editor, Collection Management and Library Outreach here at Booklist. Before we begin, I'd like to go over some technical details. The audience is in listen-only mode, but we welcome any questions you may have. On the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a section for Q&A. If you have a question for our panelists or need technical assistance, simply click Q&A and type your message into the box that appears. We will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions, and we'll pass along all other questions to today's panelists so they can answer during the panel or, pending time constraints, follow up with you after the webinar. Finally, Booklist offers closed captioning on all webinars. To enable or disable captions on your screen, please look for and click the live transcript icon on the toolbar mentioned earlier. From there, you can select show or hide subtitles from the menu that appears. If you choose to enable subtitles, you can adjust the size of the captions at any time by selecting subtitle settings. We have a wonderful webinar for you today, so let's meet our panelists. Jonathan Khan has 7 years of public library experience working as a librarian, among other positions. He is an active member in the American Library Association's graphic novel and comics and rainbow roundtables, where he has been a committee member on the Will Eisner Growth Grant Committee 2021 and 22, and the Stonewall Book Award Committee 2022. He's also currently the chair of the Asian Pacific American Library Association's Adult Fiction Award Committee. He received his MSI degree from Florida State University and currently works for the leading third-party comic book rating company, CGC Comics. He's an avid graphic novel and manga reader and has organized many successful graphic novel and fandom-focused programs in libraries. Jasmine Walls, writer of The Last Session. Jasmine is a California-based writer, artist, and hot chocolate connoisseur with a passion for stories that are fun, engaging, and critical. Her works are unapologetically queer, inclusive, and span across several genres. She has done work with Levine Carrido, Boom Studios, Mad Cave Studios, The Atlantic, The Nib, and Oni Press. You can find her on Instagram as MythJ and Twitter as MythJ Comics. Amanda Toth is the manager at the Lane Library's Community Technology Center in Hamilton, Ohio. She graduated with her MLIS from Kent State University in 2014 and has since been finding her niche in the library world. Amanda provides collection development duties for her system, ordering romance and graphic novel titles, and spends her free time reviewing books on Book Talk, as well as for Kirkus, Library Journal, and Bookshelf. And finally, Adam Fisher. Adam just celebrated 10 years at Lane Libraries in Fairfield, Ohio, where he is a reference associate. He creates and leads programming for all ages, manages the graphic novel, sci-fi, fantasy, and magazine collections at his branch, and has recently seen great success with his self-created escape room programs. Besides also writing reviews for Diamond Bookshelf, Adam reads 200 to 250 graphic novels a year. I'll now turn it over to our moderator for this panel. Take it away, Jonathan.
Hey everybody, how's everybody doing? All right, can everybody see me? All right, there we are. Welcome, welcome. Just go ahead and jump right in. Hey Amanda, hey Adam, hey Jasmine. Good to see y'all. Yeah, so I just want to go ahead and get started. We'll jump right in and just talk about why we think that LGBTQ+ representation in comics is important. This is a question for everybody, so whoever wants to take it first, go for it.
I think it's so critical for everyone to be able to see themselves in media, be it comics, books, TV shows, movies, anything like that. First of all, that's the biggest one. Is it's so critical to be able to just see yourself and experience yourself in media. And then on the other side, I think it's really important to see people who are not like you as well. You know, you never want to be stuck in sort of like an insular kind of world where you're only seeing people just like yourself. And I think it's so important to also see experiences that you're not familiar with so that you can become more familiar with them and become empathetic. And to me, that's why it's so critical.
Good answer, good answer.
I'll just basically echo all of that. I know personally, like it was really important for me to have that representation there because when I was younger, I thought that there were honestly, it was straight or you were gay. Those were your options. There was no middle ground there. You know, when I found out bisexual was a thing, I was like, oh, a whole other world is opening up. And now we have so many options for people. While I have a love-hate relationship with labels, you know, it's great because you have something you can call yourself. You can find people like you. It also does kind of limit you a little bit in some respects. So, but having that there, seeing somebody else going through the same challenges I was going through, finding things that about themselves that they didn't know, it's incredibly, like, it just really opens up a whole new world.
For sure, for sure.
I would echo both of what they were saying. It is really important to be able to identify with characters and the things that you're reading and that you're watching, as it makes you, you know, feel less alone in the world. I would add that I think it's important for normalization as well. I know that it's getting to the point to where most of the time when I read something or see it, it just doesn't even occur to me anymore that that's out of the norm. Whereas when I was growing up, obviously that was different. But I like when it doesn't necessarily always draw attention to itself. I resonate much more with those, but you know, there's a place for it with everything.
For sure. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So to go along with that, do you all have like a graphic novel that you remember reading that was maybe the first LGBTQ plus like graphic novel that you'd ever read, or maybe featured a character who was from the community or written by somebody from the community that kind of made an impact on you and just maybe changed your life for the better or for the worse?
For me, I remember it was, I probably back in like high school, it would have to be like North Star from the X-Men. You know? When it's like, if you asked for a list of queer characters, it was just a list and it had maybe 10 names on it and you could find them because it wasn't as, one, I didn't know enough about the indie comics community to know that they had a huge spread of way more variety. So I was going with a lot of the mainstream stuff. So I only had really access to what I could find in my comic shop, which was Marvel or DC. And so going through those, I remember, yeah, picking up like some of the old X-Force comics, and you've got like Shatterstar and North Star, like those kind of characters. And then from there, I kind of got so deep into comics that I started going to conventions, getting into the indie comic community and being like, oh my God, they've got it down.
Yeah.
I want to jump in there for a tiny bit just because I want to comment on what you said. I was trying to remember, I think the whole North Star thing, which was like in the early 90s, that might be my first exposure to the word gay.
Yeah.
That just might be that, because I remember it was sort of a big deal back then and they were talking about it. And then, you know, you got some other people and the list just keeps getting longer as you go on. But I wanted to jump in and say that.
For me, like, I had a vastly different experience than Adam. I grew up doing musical theater since I was a wee little child. So I was totally introduced to the world in general, but I never saw that in books, and especially not in comic books. So I am very similar to Jasmine in that X-Men was my first foray into a character that was gay. Mine was actually Colossus though. And it was very confusing for me because I watched the X-Men movies and immediately grabbed every single X-Men comic I could find, but he's only gay in, I think it's the Ultimate versions. But the other ones, no, he's with Kitty Pryde, which I kind of stan, I'll be honest. I love Kitty Pryde, but so it very much confused me how they had this character, and they wouldn't make him bi. He was gay in this one and he was straight in this one. And that kind of blew my mind a little bit and weird. I don't know why Marvel kept doing that. I think they still do probably too. Don't like it, but it's fine. It's fine.
Must be part of all the multiverse kind of things they've got going on there at Marvel. There's a whole lot of stuff going on. But yeah, so to go along with that, do you all have any like recommendations for like graphic novel titles that you want to share with the audience today, or maybe
Yeah.
some like creators that you want to share, and you know, like your favorite creators or anything like that? We can write lists, pull up our Goodreads accounts, and add books.
I 100% do have my Goodreads up, and I do, of course, make an LGBTQ shelf, and I have graphic novel shelves and everything else, but I specifically brought two that I want to talk about because I'm in love with them. I do have tons of others as well, but this one is called Patience and Esther. It's a sapphic romance. It is so cute, so absolutely adorable. I did put it in adult because they do have scenes where there's some, you know, I mean, they're showing body parts, people. It happens. So, but it is so absolutely sweet, so adorable. I gave this 5 stars, read it from the library because I bought it for the library, and then decided I had to own my own copy. And another one I for sure wanted to mention was Call Me Nathan. This one actually just read very recently. It is a fictionalized story of a fictionalized version of a true story. The person that it is actually based on, he did not want his name used, so all the names in this are like changed and everything like that. But assigned female at birth, realizes from a very, very young age that he is a man, he's a boy. He knows he's a boy. All of his friends, for the most part, treat him like boys. He still has to deal with bullies, but he has a female body and he doesn't know what to do with that. Again, I put this one in our adult collection because there are very graphic scenes, and I'm talking graphic, like he wants to rip off his breasts because he knows they're wrong. They're not his. So it's very interesting, a wonderful, wonderful version or like view of a transgender story, like coming out, realizing who they are, eventually transitioning. And it's great to see like the parents are supportive but confused. They don't really understand, trying to go through the whole like I have 2 sons. I have 2 sons. So this was just highly, highly recommended. And I'll stop now. I'll stop for now. I promise.
Keep going. You can keep going. We've got time.
All right. One more. I'll throw in one more because I like to throw in a manga too. I have not read all of this yet, but Boys Run the Riot, another transgender story, highly, highly recommended. I like to have at least one manga as well as graphic novels, but yeah, so all of those definitely recommended. Our library system is incredibly conservative. It's in a conservative area. So I am more likely to put things in adult if they're kind of borderline than I am in teen. But that's because I know that it's still there for kids to access. They can still see it. They can get them because for the most part, we don't limit what kids can check out. It's up to their parents to decide.
Cool. Thanks, man.
I have 3 examples. Again, library people, we can talk about this till we're red in the face. I do have 2 examples that are in teen, Amanda, that honestly, a couple years ago, I finally got around to reading Prince and the Dressmaker, which was very, very shocking. I don't want to ruin the end for anybody that hasn't read this here, but this is the story of a prince who chooses to be a fashion icon in his dealings with a dressmaker who's trying to keep the secret for a while. Just a lot of really strong love and acceptance in this. Was very, very good. Recently, I don't know how this one escaped my radar for so long, is Nimona. This is another one where the overtones of it are not blatant. It's not part of the storyline. The 2 men in this story who are rivals have a relationship and a past together as to go. This was very good. It's in our teen section, I think just because of a little bit on the comment or the content and some of the late sort of end game violence, but this is really good even for like older kids like 10 or 11. And then the last I brought to draw attention to is Monstrous. There are a lot of queer characters in here, lots of bi characters in here. It's so overwhelming with the lore of it. However, I would recommend this if you read a lot of sci-fi fantasy, which I do. This is pretty epic as far as the lore and stuff is, but again, called attention to in the story, but not overwhelmingly so.
Cool. Thanks, Adam. Monstrous is beautiful, by the way. The artwork in that book or in those books is just fantastic.
Absolutely.
I feel like asking recommendations from librarians and comic people is dangerous. I have a huge list, so I'm going to try and narrow it down to 3.
All right.
Anything by Melanie Gilman. Just As the Crow Flies is one of theirs, and that's really, really gorgeous. They work in color pencil, and the pages are just so lush and beautiful, and they've got so many stories that they put out, short and long. I think As the Crow Flies, and there was a Western one as well, but they're all very lovely. They're all queer, and they all tackle different kinds of stories. Some of them are like, I know As the Crow Flies is like contemporary teens going to like a camp. There's a Western that's like a kind of actiony Western romance. Like the genres and themes go all over the place, and every single one is excellent. So Mel Gilman is a fantastic one. I'm gonna say one of my absolute favorites, probably my favorite graphic novel that I read last year, was Snapdragon by Kat Leigh. Absolutely stunning. It's about this young girl who lives in this small town, and there's this older woman who's just kind of the witch. Everyone thinks she's the witch of the town, and this girl gets curious and ends up interacting with her and ends up kind of befriending this older woman, and a lot of these older secrets from this woman's life are revealed, and it's gorgeous. It's an excellent story. Highly recommend it. Not enough people have read it. Let's see, I'm trying not to pick the ones from like the top 10 list that everybody knows. Cosmo Knights is also an excellent one. It was I believe it was a web comic that then became a graphic novel. I follow a lot of graphic novel artists as a comic creator myself. So I'm like, all right, let me see who I can promote, just because I love all these people. There's so many books. But I'm going to say those are the 3 that I'm going to say, or else it'll go on forever.
All right. Well, hey, you get to talk a little bit more now, because we're going to talk about your book here now. Because I think we've all read it here. The last session was great.
Oh, good.
I loved it. Yeah, we were hoping that maybe you could tell us a little bit about your creative process and how you put the story together, and anything you want to share about it.
Absolutely. Oh, I'm going to throw one more title in there.
Oh,
Sorry.
Yeah.
Artie and the Wolf Moon by Olivia Stevens. Absolutely read that one. I haven't seen it around enough, but it is excellent. Okay, I'm done now. I'll stop. But for the last session, it was actually a really fun project to work on. I was approached by Mad Cave Studios. I was approached by the editor, and they said, we would like you to write a D&D story for us. And they gave me a really bare bones outline that they kind of wanted me to follow. And then I said, how about if I change all of that? I was like, what if I do this instead? And they said, sounds good. And they gave me way too much freedom, and I ran with it. And it was a lot of fun to work on. So I really wanted to tell a story about a group of friends who had been playing for a really long time, and who introduced this new person. And I remember in the original concept they gave me, this new person was kind of like causing problems and intentionally being a jerk. And I was like, if you've ever played D&D, one, you have met someone like that, but you also know that you just kick them out. And I was like, that would be a very quick story if in chapter 1 we just threw the character out and this is done. So I said, what if it's someone who's very earnest? What if we have a character who comes in and is trying her hardest and is so enthusiastic about the game, but just screws up left and right? And how does that dynamic play out? Because I feel like that's a little bit more of an honest way of telling that story. And there was a lot, the editors just gave me, again, way too much freedom. I went nuts. And it was really great to work on.
Awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. So had you played D&D before you wrote the book, or did you have to research?
I'm a huge tabletop nerd. I played D&D straight through high school, and then I kept playing, and I am now 31. I still play on a bi-weekly basis. Yeah, no, I love tabletop games. Anytime I get to create a character and roll some dice and just go wild, I'm like, let's do it.
Yeah. So one of the main things I really loved about the story was how diverse the cast of characters were. I thought you did an excellent job with that.
Thank you.
I was wondering if you wanted to talk about any of the characters, if you maybe had a favorite, maybe want to talk about how you came up with some of them, or anything like that. That'd be awesome.
For sure. When it comes to like having a diverse cast, I'm very intentional about it. A lot of times I'll talk to the creators and they're like, oh yeah, I just see what happens. And I'm like, oh no, when we go into it, I'm like, we're gonna make a diverse cast very intentionally. I want it to be something that I think about, and I want it to be done in a way that's respectful to the audience and to the characters. So we went to this, I was like, I never see enough mixed race people. As someone who's mixed, it's something I always want to see more of, and that I really, really enjoy. So each of the characters, they've each got a lot of backstory that doesn't quite necessarily make it in unless you catch some of the visual cues. So each of the characters, if you look at their D&D personas, the actual in-game personas, each of them has their costume matches a piece of their culture. So you have Drew, he's Black. His armor is based off a lot of African armor. His protection runes are based off Andrinka runes. So there's a lot of African-based visuals. We have Shen, who's mixed. She's Black and Korean, and she's a druid. So I said, oh, what if all the birds and the flowers that you see bloom on her, or the birds that fly around her, are all ones that you would find in Korea specifically. You have Walter, who's Chinese American, and he's a ranger. And I was like, oh, well, let's try and base his costume off of the classic Chinese archers. So each of the characters, yeah, so they've all got their own thing. You have Lana, who's Indian, and so the daggers she has are kukris. She's got these, so each of them has very regional kind of bits of their costume. And then when I was discussing characters, they each have, you kind of flash back from their high school years to modern day where they're in college and trying to finish this campaign, and then in the campaign. And for their high school years, I wanted to establish what brought these kids together and why this campaign is so important to them. So they each have some sort of thing going on at home, like an issue, like be it, worrying about their weight, transitioning, all sorts of things. So it was all very intentional, and the team was absolutely fantastic to work with. I worked with Dozer, who did the art, and is just so good. And just knocked it out of the park in every way. Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, it's a beautiful book. Great story, great art, all around great. Yeah. So yeah, if anybody hasn't read it, it's called The Last Session. It's great. It's a great book. Just pop that in there. But
I hope you're gonna continue this, right?
The series?
More of the story.
I have no idea. Okay. So actually, I thought it was a one-off volume until I saw the final cover that said volume 1, and I was like, wait a minute. So I've gotten a lot of questions. I would love to keep writing it. I don't know what's gonna happen. So I'm gonna put it out there and be like, I would happily do more.
Sweet. Cool. Well, I want to talk a little bit about how libraries can work to promote books like your book and other books that we talked about earlier, just to patrons and to the communities that they serve. I think Amanda and Adam have a lot of experience with giving out book recommendations and things like that. And I think it'd be awesome to talk a little bit about what libraries can do to promote these book patrons.
Okay, so I'll go first. I try to make it like a kind of regular part of programming. So I run an online book club. It is through Discord. It started during the pandemic, but everybody seems to really enjoy it, so we keep going. What we do instead of reading the same book every month is we pick a topic and we just read whatever we want that meets that topic. And so we have something in common to discuss, but we can find a lot more things and broaden our horizons. We kind of switch off between some more like serious and literary subjects, like, oh, we really need to read, like, obviously for the past, last month we did AAPI reads. In a future month, we're doing disability voices. So we do things like that. And then we also do fun things like beach reads. I mean, not that the other ones aren't fun, but lighter things that people might think of as lighter, more enjoyable, light-hearted reads kind of thing. So for those, some of the ones that people are just not sure what to read for, I always come up with find some book lists, and I make sure to always find ones that feature diverse voices, that feature comics that have characters that are on the LGBTQ spectrum. And I try to read more of those as well, so that when I participate in the book club, I'm also bringing these up. I want to make it the goal is to make it completely normal. Luckily, at this point, we've curated such a fantastic group of people in the book club that they're reading these on their own anyways, which is nice. But we also try to, so Hamilton, the city I live in, had its first Pride celebration last year. And I think Adam's going to talk a little bit more about some of the stuff in Pride too at some point, I think. But I will also mention, so this year, being a little bit more involved in it, since it's, we were able to get in while they're starting the planning instead of just finding out, oh, it's happening. So my library branch specifically, we're a makerspace. So we made things on the 3D printer for the library to give away at Pride. We made programs based on Pride. So we had people learn how to make their own light up earrings and things like that. So having people at the library branch who either are a fantastic ally or are part of the LGBT community themselves, working on things that are so very obviously part of Pride and everything else. And then also, being like, oh, hey, well, did you read this while you're here? Like, sometimes you have to sneak books to people, and that's perfectly fine. So, that's one of the big things. I just want it to be everywhere. It doesn't, people talk about, well, I just don't want to see it in my face all the time. And I was like, well, I see all the rest of the stuff in my face all the time. How about we just have everything be normal and fine?
Yeah.
Part of what I'm doing at the Fairfield branch is going to echo a lot of what Amanda said. Very key for us, just like any genre of book, we need to have knowledge about it. Just knowing the titles that are great, the titles that we have, which creators themselves, what the characters are based on, whether it be, diverse or non-diverse. I mean, we have a wide spectrum of the knowledge that we have to have. And with that, that's how we promote things. People come to us all the time asking for specific recommendations. Sometimes they're asking specifically for LGBTQ plus stuff. Sometimes they're specifically asking for diverse materials. And with that, we can lead them to. Sometimes, she's right, we do sneak them in. We say, hey, this is a really great story about these people and they're doing the thing. And then we just don't even mention it and it becomes more commonplace. And it's really important that we can not only read people to see where they are in that discussion, but that we can react to it. This month is Pride, so we have lots of displays already set up, stuff being put out all the time. We have worked graphic novels directly into our main display, so we made sure that that was a huge part of that. As far as Pride goes, Pride for Hamilton is tomorrow. So we will be there. Our bookmobile, some libraries have those, some don't. So our mobile library bookmobile will be there on site. We have a permanent spot. We're gonna have lots of crafts and things, stuff that Amanda's done with the maker spaces. But I wanted to point out a thing that's very good, especially for Pride and for drawing attention to these types of graphic novels, is that we've curated book lists that are going to be distributed at our booth and at our bookmobile that have lots of titles and lists, all of things that we carry here at the library, graphic novels, main fiction, all ages, stuff from little kids all the way up to adults, all containing representation as far as Pride goes. But those will be, that's something that a lot of our staff worked on together. A lot of people that are on the committee, like Amanda and I, worked on those. And it's going to be great to see after tomorrow, hopefully the rise in the circulation of that type of thing. So.
Awesome. What about you, Jasmine? You have anything you'd like to
I was gonna
share?
say they are experts, and my only experience is going to the library. But
That's
one thing
valuable
that I can say is that I really appreciate when not only are there displays that are like big Pride displays or saying like, oh hey, these are specifically queer books, but also when books with queer characters are just kind of circulated in with other displays, or like one of my favorite is not so much these characters are display as it is like a, you know, kind of like a story tag where it's like, oh, if you really like enemies to lovers, this shelf is, you know, this display is what you want. Or if you really like intrigue or suspense, this is what you're looking for. That sort of thing that gives you like a vibe of the book rather than this book has a gay character, you know, because that doesn't tell me if I'm going to like the book. I mean, I'm glad to see it, but that doesn't, you know, it could be something that I have no interest in picking up. But if I'm like, yeah, there's like a prince and a knight, I'm down for that. Like, you know, if I see like the vibe for the book, then I'm way more likely to walk over and pick it up. And I feel like that's going to be helpful to a lot of people who maybe necessarily aren't specifically looking for queer books. They just want a really good book, who might not have picked it up if it was on a Pride display, but a month later, if they go to a fantasy display, they're like, oh, actually, this does sound really good. I just, you know, maybe they weren't feeling comfortable going over to another display. I know when I grew up as a teen, there was a lot of time I spent with adults who wouldn't make me feel comfortable at all going to a display like that if there's anyone around me. And but if it was on a sci-fi display, I could get away with it. So kind of having that, you know, having it in both, and that goes along with normalizing things, is mixing it into displays where it's not necessarily like a bright rainbow color. And as much, and I do love the rainbow displays, like nowadays I'm like, heck yeah, I'm going right there. But I do feel for anyone who's going to libraries and maybe doesn't have that sort of confidence or freedom to be able to go to any other display, and they're all, you know, they're mixed in, so you just go, oh, actually, you know, it's a fantasy book, I can pick this up. And I think that helps a lot for anyone who's not at that comfort level where they can go up to anything with like rainbow stickers on it, or if it's on a big Pride display. To me, I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I'm glad you pointed that out. So Amanda, you are in charge of collections at your library, correct? Yes, all right, cool. Yeah, I was hoping that you could maybe talk a little bit about your selection process when it comes to picking out LGBTQ plus graphic novels for your collection.
So I order romance novels, teen graphic novels, and adult graphic novels. Juvenile graphic novels are just held in our general juvenile collection. We separate them out, but they're ordered by the juvenile selector. So the biggest issue for me is usually deciding if it's going to be in adult or teen. Again, like I said, my community, especially our system, is very conservative. So I do tend to lean towards, if there's a question, I'm probably going to put it in adult, which is why our adult manga collection is actually growing. We're getting more requests, but we, you know, we do still, like, we put it in the record that it's got the, you know, it's an LGBTQ kind of relationship in there, so people searching for it can find it. we do make sure, like, we actually are pretty good at highlighting our graphic novel selections at the branches themselves. Like, they have their own area, so people know exactly where to go. But when it comes to selecting, honestly, like, if you work in a library and you do selecting, use NetGalley and Edelweiss. They're fantastic. They'll put volume 1s of manga and stuff on there. Read them, you know, and eventually, like, you can get to the point where publishers will just automatically accept you to read anything that you want from them. And it's incredibly helpful. I do rely on a bunch of online options. So Bookshelf, Booklist, Library Journal, School Library Journal, definitely. And then sometimes it's literally just, I'm finding different queer content creators, just people who just really love queer comics and are talking about them on Book Talk, YouTube, etc. And I follow them. I also love going to webinars. I'll usually have a webinar going on at least once a day at work, just listening in the background while I'm doing stuff. So I want to hear about the different options out there so I can then weed from this huge list down to, okay, we only have so much money. I can't buy everything I want as much as I'd love to. So I have to break it down from there into what I think people are not only going to really desperately want to read, but also what do we need in our collection so we have something balanced. And this is not necessarily comics related, but also, I mean, works for everybody doing collection development. I refused to go, I hate going through and being like, okay, well, I haven't ordered a lot of, LGBTQ books in several months, so this month is going to be heavy on the LGBTQ stuff. No, don't do that. Try not to do that. Add a little bit in throughout the year. I try to make sure I have at least a couple LGBTQ books in every order that I do, because again, you want to normalize it. Especially if you live in a conservative community, because then people will complain. You'll have people complain. It happens. We've had it happen. We have a review policy in place and we follow it. But in situations like that, they can be like, well, you're just ordering all of these books that are just inappropriate for kids. And it's like, they're not inappropriate. Also, there's nothing like, what's different from ordering these books than this? And why do you have a problem with that? So I try to work that kind of thing in. Did I actually answer that question? I know that was a lot of talking.
Yeah, I think you did a very thorough job.
Thanks.
So I've got a big question here for everybody here. I want to talk a little bit more about like what libraries can actually do to be more inclusive for the LGBTQ plus communities that they serve, that they may not know that they serve, but that are coming to their library. This is for everybody to answer. Anybody wants to jump in. Things like programming, things like outreach, maybe partnering with like local organizations in the community, anything like that.
I'll jump in really quick because I'm still on a tangent from the last one. So one of the things is like pay attention to local events, even very small ones. I found a random thing. I follow one of the local like crystal witchy shops, and they decided to do a random little pop-up thing in the park. And it wasn't just about like crystals and witchy things. It was LGBTQ supporting, and it happened like a month and a half ago. So very random timing, but I was all for it. Decided to go and met a bunch of like local groups. One that specifically offers scholarships to LGBTQ students. Another one is like the local GLSEN. I usually just say GLSEN. I don't always remember what the letters are. And then some other things like that. So I put my name down and now I'm getting all of these newsletters and it's fantastic. Like I said, just throw those recommendations out there when you've got the other recommendations. Put those books on the displays all the time. Also, people like libraries, I firmly believe that libraries should be safe spaces for everybody. And people who are not necessarily, they're not sure if a place is safe for them will be looking for signs that the place is. So one of the things we do is I found a really cool sign that I liked from one of the publishers that said all are welcome in this library, and it's got a rainbow on it. That has been up on our bulletin board just inside the door since I found it. I know it was only supposed to be for Pride Month. That's what they wanted it to be, but no, it's there all the time. There will be rainbows strategically hidden throughout our building at all times, because the people who need that will know that. I also ensure, I have a very small staff. We are very diverse staff, not just racially, but also heritage, lifestyle, that kind of thing. And we ensure that everybody feels welcome. Like, we say, hello, how are you doing? We tell them goodbye when they leave, hope they have a good day. So people feel comfortable coming to the library, no matter what their situation is.
Great answer. Does anybody have anything they want to add?
I'm gonna piggyback a tiny bit on that, and it'll have to go back to Amanda to explain just a little bit. We've been seeing an uptick with our diverse and inclusive teenagers, specifically through a new teen Discord server that we have. I'll have you jump in here in a second. But we've seen a lot of people sort of testing the waters with that to see how safe and inclusive we are. And I know at Fairfield, we've had some of those kids finally come in for some of our teen afternoon programming and such. Amanda, do you want to cover anything else?
Yeah, just basically what he said. Like, we have a specific channel in our teen Discord server that is, I think it's called LGBTQ Safe Space, and they can come in there and talk about anything. I think they know that quite a few of us are probably somewhere on the LGBTQ spectrum. We do have an introductions channel, and I am very open about the fact that I use she, they pronouns. So we've got things like that on there. They have come in to Fairfield, like you said, and talked to staff members because they have realized that we're safe people online. So they feel comfortable talk to us in person. And that's really helped. Just having those little things, like, you could even just call it a rainbow room if you feel like that is easier for people to handle. And it really, like, it goes a long way for kids that don't necessarily feel safe everywhere.
I just wanted to add a little bit. As someone going into a library, one of the first things you note, and as Amanda said, it's something that when you're looking for something, you're gonna kind of be looking around. You don't necessarily walk up to the librarian and be like, do you got queer books? But you will be looking for them. You'll be looking at the displays, you'll be looking at everything. And for me, there are a couple of things I always look for. Can I spot any books that I know are gonna have queer content? And how are they displayed? Are they tucked away in a corner in the back of the library? In which case I'm like, ooh, that's not great. Are they on a display? Are they displayed in a way that's normalizing, where they're mixed in with the other books, or are they put in their own? Because as great as it is to display things, it's kind of like how I feel when I go to a Target, and then all the cards for Black people are in their own little section. I'm like, that doesn't make me feel great. I think it's nice it exists, but like, I shouldn't have to go to like the Black people section to get a greeting card. And that's kind of how it can be at libraries, where I love when things are displayed and represented. But I also like when it's things are kind of mixed in. And one of the things that I recommend to any library going in, just to catch people's attention and make people know it's a safe place, is to have a lot of diversity on the covers that you're displaying. Like, the more covers that I see that have people of color on them, that have queer couples on them, that aren't just the same kind of like cis, white, straight stories that are the ones that are facing out, and all the other ones are like only you only get to see the binding. That makes a difference, and that's something that the patrons notice. If I come in and it's not February and I see a bunch of books with Black people on it, I'm like, yes, thank you. If I come in and the only time I see Black people in covers is in February, that tells me that it's more to kind of, I don't know, it's not necessarily the library's fault, but it does mean that maybe the people working there, or the audience of that library, is not really where I'm going to feel safe personally. So those things do make a difference in really thoughtful displays. And then having lists available which I love. I love being able to go up and be like, oh, maybe there's a printout that says, if you're looking for books with queer characters, that sort of thing. I can grab that and it feels a little more subtle, I guess.
Yeah.
Again, I'm always thinking about people who maybe don't necessarily feel safe going up to a big rainbow cover display, but who might look up those books later on, that sort of thing.
Awesome.
I did want to throw in one more thing, that this is very small. It's also kind of difficult to do because you really have to train yourself. Stop using gendered language. You don't have to say welcome, ladies and gentlemen. You can just say welcome, everyone. You don't have to say hi, boys and girls, when you're doing story time. Just say, hey, guys, or guys is the word. See, it's hard. It's hard to get out of that use.
It is.
Same with like dude. Dude, in my opinion, is kind of gender neutral at this point, but it isn't for some people. So just trying to say, hey, all, or folks, I'm from Ohio and it's technically the South basically here. So we say y'all, and that's totally gender neutral and okay. So just little things like that, just being welcoming and accepting and gender neutral, like I said.
Yeah, it can definitely be hard to like catch yourself like saying like, hey, you guys, or whatever. I try to use like everyone, or like you said, like you all, and phrases like that for sure. All right, well, we're gonna take some time now to answer some questions from the chat. Looks like we've got a couple questions here that are asking about how everybody feels about putting spine labels on books that kind of mark them out as being labeled as LGBTQ+. Anybody want to take that and see how they feel about it?
Oh, okay. So I understand why some people would want to do that. I get it. It makes it easier to find if people want recommendations or if they're looking specifically for that. But please don't. You're going to have, especially when it comes to like teen collections and things in children's collections, because you're going to have kids take those home and those parents might immediately take them away from them if they even let them take them home. Or it's going to out a kid. Or even just if someone wants to read about it and they don't feel safe even discussing it at home. So I would avoid it as much as you can. It's better to have book lists. It's better to have automatic recommendations ready to go in your head. People talk about librarians getting to read all day at work, and I've never experienced that. And so apparently I'm working in the wrong library. But so when it comes to stuff like that, like I know we have to read widely and it's not always an option. But at least being aware of what's out there, have some go-tos that you just refresh every so often. But please avoid the spine labels. I feel like it's a very bad idea.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. Got some questions in here. Does anybody have any recommendations of graphic novels that feature asexual characters or aromantic characters?
I can't answer that one. As someone who is ace and aromantic myself, the last session does in fact have an ace character who's also aromantic, and ends up in a queer platonic relationship with her best friend. For other ace characters, you have, oh gosh, there's one, the Creative Heartstopper just put out an ace book. Sorry, I've got my list on my iPad and I'm looking at it right now. There was another one, How to Be Ace, is there? Those are the top ones. There's a book called Rock and Riot, but it's not widely, it's not something you can like order. It was a web comic that the person kind of independently sold. There's quite a few ace characters. There's not a lot of ace characters who take front and center. And I only know this because as an ace person, I'm always on the lookout for graphic novels with ace characters. And they can be a little tricky. A lot of times they're like a secondary character. And there's quite a few graphic novels like that. And a lot of them are doing really great jobs. But yeah, they can be a little bit tricky to find, but those would be, you have like How to Be Ace. You've got, if I could remember the name of the one, but it's the Creative Heartstopper. I think almost everybody knows Heartstopper by now.
Yeah,
put out a book about being ace in high school, and yeah, and the last session definitely has one because I absolutely wanted that rep in there.
Awesome, thank you, Jasmine. So we got another question in here. guess this would go towards Amanda or Adam. Have either of you had to deal with any parent pushback ever? And if so, how have you dealt with it and how'd you handle it?
I'll jump in first. Adam might have some stuff to throw in there too. Yes, we totally have. Of course we have. It's the age of book challenges. So one, we have a fantastic collection development policy in place. And we specifically say on there, did you read the whole book? So it's not just, did they page through it and be like, well, I saw a boob or something, did they read the whole book? And you have to give specific page numbers to point towards this problematic area. And then what we do is we go through and it actually, there's a selection committee, the collection development manager, people who are aware of that, like read widely in that section, will go through and read the title if they haven't already and be like, all right, you know what, I can kind of see their point. This maybe isn't right for this age group. Let's move it to adult. Or we had a juvenile title, we moved to teen. And sometimes it happens that a book might start out okay for juvenile and will end up better for teen. This happened with, oh my gosh, it's the Raven the Pirate Princess is one that kind of started as okay for younger because Princeless. Princeless is a fantastic series. Yeah. So Princeless, I'm totally fine with that always being in juvenile, but there was a spin-off series called Raven the Pirate Princess. And that one, while the first volume, totally okay to be in juvenile, does get a little bit more teen as it goes. So we had to eventually move those. Stuff like that happens. Same with like manga, admittedly, is kind of bad at it. They'll start out volume 1 and 2 might be perfectly fine. Volume 3, you have nudity everywhere. So be prepared to move things. But I think the fact that we can say, hey, the library is for everyone. We did have a group of professionals who are aware of the section and aware of what is and is not appropriate for different age groups, are going through and reviewing the materials, and they're deciding what needs to be removed or not from the collection. And I don't think we've removed much, if anything, from our collection. I think we're more likely to just move it somewhere else. Honestly, though, sometimes those people just really want to complain. Give them a form and tell them they have to fill it out, and you'll never see them again. That's the hope anyways. It doesn't always work out, but
she hit it pretty well. The only thing I have to add is because of some of the content and because of the crowd in which we live in, the more conservative type areas, one thing that we do is usually if it's like a teenager or a kid and they're coming with their parent to try to find something, I will say to their parent something along the lines of, where's your content block? How far can your child read? How far are you going to let them read? Are you okay with, a romantic relationship that necessarily isn't, seen and things like that? Or are they going all the way up to something that is very graphic? Trying to determine where, I don't want to call it a reading level, but it's almost like that type of thing where you're just sort of determining how much content you can go with someone. And yeah, it does get really bad in certain things, is that it starts fine and then they progress it. So I know when I'm aware of that, I will say that to the parent or the person, saying like, hey, volume 1 and volume 2 are really great. You may want to look at volume 3 before you go there. So.
Thank you. So yeah, I guess that's about all the time we have for today. I just want to thank everybody for coming today, and thank our panel of Amanda, Adam, and Jasmine for joining us. You guys are awesome. It's really nice talking to you today and meeting you all. And I'll hand it back over to Susan now.
Thanks, Jonathan. So thank you so much, Jonathan, Jasmine, Amanda, and Adam. It was so wonderful to hear your expertise and about all the great titles you mentioned. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming ones like those you see here. Not yet a subscriber? Pair the print reading experience with the convenience of online access at booklistonline.com and lock in print, online, digital, and archive access by taking advantage of this special webinar offer to get Booklist for only $75. Patron-friendly, librarian approved, and free with the Booklist subscription, Booklist Reader, Booklist's new digital-only magazine highlighting diverse readers' advisory recommendations for all ages, has arrived. To see and share the latest issue, visit booklistonline.com/reader-issues. And recently, Booklist, Booklinks, and Booklist Reader joined the Overdrive Magazine's program in partnership with Zinio and are available for your patrons to read in Libby. Catch up on the latest issues now. Heading to ALA in Washington, D.C., Booklist has a ton of events happening there during the entire conference to fulfill all your library and reading needs. We have 2 #ReadGraphic panels featuring your favorite graphic novel creators, award shows galore, a panel dedicated to fighting censorship in your school or library, a read and rave with library reads, author signings, book giveaways, swag, and more. Stop by booth 1427 or follow our Twitter page at ALA_Booklist for the latest on all these events. Thank you all for joining us for today's webinar. One more huge thank you to our panelists and to our sponsor, Diamond Book Distributors. This concludes today's webinar. See you next time.